The flight landed just after dawn. Kansas City International was quiet in that dull, fluorescent way airports get between rushes. I picked up the rental car, signed my name where the clerk pointed, and drove east while the sky slowly went gray. The road into St. Joseph hadn't changed. Same exits, same billboards peeling at the corners. I wasn't coming home. I was visiting. The backyard was already full when I arrived. Folding chairs, string lights, a grill smoking too early. Carol stood on the back steps like she always had, glass in hand, smiling at people she barely remembered. Brad leaned near the cooler, older now, louder still. My dad, Richard, stayed near the fence, pretending to watch the food. Carol spotted me and waved, big and performative. You made it. For your birthday? Well, good. She turned back to her guests before I could say anything else. Someone handed me a drink. I held it without sipping. Carol tapped her glass for attention. To 60, she said, voice bright. To family. To the kids who make you proud every single day. Brad grinned. A few people laughed. Carol's eyes slid to me. No pause. No hesitation. I wish I didn't have to see you every day. The laugh that followed came fast, unsure where to land. Brad made a sound like he might interrupt, then didn't. Richard stared at the grass, jaw tight. I set my cup down on the patio table. My hands were steady. That surprised me. Carol frowned. Don't do this at my party. Do what? Make it awkward. You just said it out loud. Brad stepped closer. Hannah, come on. She didn't mean it like that. Carol tilted her head. You always twist things. Richard finally spoke. Soft. Not tonight. I looked at him. You're still doing that. Carol's smile hardened. If you're going to be sensitive, maybe you shouldn't have come. I nodded once. I reached into my pocket and set my keys on the table. The rental car fob clinked against the glass. You don't have to see me, I said. I'll take care of it. Brad stared. You're leaving already. Yes. Carol scoffed. You always run. I fly. I said. Then I drive back. I walked through the side gate without rushing. Behind me. Someone tried to restart the music. It came on too loud, too late. At the car. My phone buzzed. I didn't check it. I pulled onto the road toward the airport. The house shrinking in the mirror. I had a return flight booked. One night. One obligation. That was enough. I didn't learn my place all at once. It came in pieces, small enough to swallow. In our house in St. Joseph. Brad's name lived on the fridge. Game schedules, practice times, newspaper clippings held up with red magnets. Mine showed up in pencil, if it showed up at all. On my 12th birthday, I came home to an empty kitchen. No balloons, no cake, just a note on the counter, written fast and crooked. Brad has practice. Order pizza if you're hungry. I stood there a minute, backpack still on, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. I poured cereal, ate it dry, and wiped the counter like that counted as something. That night, Dad came in late. He loosened his tie and glanced at the calendar. Oh, today was your birthday. It's fine. He nodded, relieved. Good. Brad's birthdays were different. The yard filled up. Carol wore her nice sandals. People she barely knew hugged her and told her she must be so proud. She always agreed. Brad's going places, she'd say, smoothing his jersey. Some kids just have that spark. Once, while she folded laundry, I tried to tell her about a book I was reading. She kept her eyes on the fabric. That's nice. She said, Can you grab his fundraiser envelope? He's short again. I handed it over. The jar clinked with coins I'd saved from babysitting. She didn't notice. At dinner, Brad talked. Carol reacted. Dad nodded along, chewing carefully. When I spoke, Carol's smile tightened. Don't interrupt your brother. I wasn't. She set her fork down. You always do this. Dad cleared his throat. Let's keep the peace. That was his favorite line. It sounded fair. It never was. Later, when Brad needed rides, help with homework, someone to clean up after his friends, Carol turned to me like it was already settled. "You're good at that stuff," she said. "Be useful." I learned to stay quiet, to move fast, to fill gaps before anyone noticed they existed. By the time I was old enough to want something for myself, the role was locked in. Brad mattered. Mom decided. Dad agreed by not disagreeing. And I learned how to disappear without leaving the room. Aunt Elaine started showing up without warning on Sundays. Not holidays, just regular days when the house felt tired. Her car always sounded like it needed something, a rattle when she pulled into the driveway. She knocked once, then let herself in like she'd earned that right years ago. Carol never liked it. "You should call first," she'd say from the kitchen. Elaine would smile and hold up a grocery bag. I was nearby. She waited. That was her thing. She waited until Carol went upstairs to shower or disappeared into the laundry room. Then she'd lean against the counter and lower her voice. "You eating enough? I'm fine." She studied my face like she didn't believe me. Then she'd slip an envelope into my backpack while pretending to look for a pen. "For books," she'd say, tapping the zipper closed. "Or whatever you need." The first time, I tried to give it back. "I can't take this." Elaine shook her head once. "You're not taking it. You're using it." Brad came through the kitchen, sweaty from practice. "Hey, Aunt Elaine." She nodded at him. "Hi, Brad." That was it. No fuss, no praise. Just a greeting. One afternoon, when Brad had a tournament out of town, the house emptied early. Coolers, gear bags, Carol barking reminders. I stayed behind, claiming a stomachache. The door hadn't even closed all the way before Elaine knocked at the back. She handed me a bus pass and a folded flyer. "There's a computer club downtown. Thursdays." "I don't know anything about that." "You'll learn." At the tech center, the room smelled like burnt coffee and dry erase markers. A guy with a ponytail pointed at a screen and said, "Type this," when my name printed back at me. Elaine watched from the doorway like she'd expected it. On the drive home, she kept the radio low. "You don't owe anyone for this." "I know." She glanced over. "You don't. I do this because someone should." That night, Carol noticed the flyer on the counter. "What's this?" "A class." She snorted. "That junk won't feed you." Elaine stood up, already reaching for her keys. "Neither will silence." She left before Carol could answer. The space under the stairs wasn't meant to be anything. A slanted ceiling, a single bulb on a pull chain, cardboard boxes stacked so tight you had to turn sideways to get in. I dragged a folding table down there one afternoon while Carol was at the store. It scraped the wall, left a mark. I didn't bother fixing it. Elaine helped me find the first laptop. "It doesn't turn on." The guy in the parking lot warned. "That's fine," Elaine said, already handing him the cash. "At home." I set it on the table and took it apart with a butter knife. The screen was cracked. The battery was dead. When I plugged it into an old power strip and pressed the button, the fan wheezed, then stopped. I laughed anyway. The noise brought Carol to the basement door. She flicked on the light and stared. "What is all this?" "Just stuff." She nudged a loose cable with her foot. "This looks like an electronic cemetery. Brad needs this space for his weights. I'll keep it out of the way." She crossed her arms. "You always say that." I waited until she left, then moved everything deeper into the corner, behind paint cans, old golf clubs. I learned how to be small without quitting. At night, I worked with headphones on, the volume low. When something failed, it failed quietly. A black screen, a blinking cursor. I learned patience by force. Dad came down once, holding a mug. "You should clean this up," he said, not looking at me. "It is clean." He sighed. "Your mother's just worried. She's not." He took a sip and headed back upstairs. The door didn't slam. It never did. A week later, the internet dropped every time Carol ran the dryer. I waited until the house emptied and fed a cable along the baseboard, drilled a small hole where no one would notice, and connected it to the router in the living room. The light blinked steady. It felt like a secret win. One Saturday morning, Carol came down looking for decorations. She stopped short. "You're turning my house into trash. It's temporary." She laughed once. "Everything with you is temporary." Brad's voice echoed from the stairs. "Mom, I need the bench set up." Carol pointed at my table. "See?" I unplugged everything, coiled the cables slow. She watched, satisfied. That night, after everyone went to bed, I plugged it all back in. The bulb buzzed. The screen lit up. I stayed there until my eyes burned, typing lines I barely understood, fixing mistakes one by one. Upstairs, the television laughed at something canned. Down there, the machine finally stayed on. The letter came in a thick envelope, heavier than the rest of the mail. I found it under grocery ads and a credit card offer with Brad's name on it. UNC Charlotte. Partial scholarship. Tuition covered. Housing not. I sat on the edge of my bed and read it twice. Slow, like it might change. At dinner, Carol served meatloaf and watched Brad scroll his phone. "I got into UNC Charlotte," I said. "They offered me a scholarship." Brad looked up first. "Charlotte's far. North Carolina." Carol added, already frowning. "Why would you go there? It's a good program." She set the serving spoon down. "We need you here." "For what?" Brad snorted. "For us." Carol nodded. "Your brother has scouts coming. Schedules to manage. Rides. You know how busy it gets. I can work there. I can cover housing. With what money? I'll figure it out." Richard cleared his throat. "Community college makes more sense. Stay local." I pushed the letter across the table. "This starts in January." Carol didn't touch it. "You're being selfish." Elaine's voice echoed in my head. Options. After dinner, I went to the computer in the living room. Brad showered upstairs. Carol watched television, volume high. The acceptance portal loaded slow. I typed my name, my date of birth, my confirmation. A green check appeared. Upstairs, Carol noticed the packed boxes a week later. "You're actually doing this?" "Yes." She folded Brad's jerseys sharp and neat. "If you walk out, don't expect help." "I'm not." Richard stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets. "Think carefully." "I have." Elaine showed up the night before I left. She pressed a debit card into my hand. "For the bus in the first month. I'll pay you back." She squeezed my shoulder. "You already are." At dawn, I carried my bag to the curb. The house stayed dark. When the bus pulled up, I didn't look back. Charlotte didn't soften anything. It just kept moving and expected you to keep up. My scholarship covered tuition. That was it. Rent, food. Books, those were on me. I shared a narrow apartment with 2 other students, slept on a mattress that dipped in the middle, and learned which groceries lasted longest when money ran thin. Weekdays were classes. Nights were the diner. Wiping down counters and memorizing orders shouted over clattering plates. Weekends belonged to the warehouse. The place smelled like cardboard and oil. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. We scanned pallets, counted inventory, moved fast because the supervisor liked speed more than accuracy. One Saturday night, we were short-staffed. Again. "Push it." The supervisor called out. "We're behind schedule." I turned the electric pallet jack too quickly. A loose strap snagged. The load shifted. I jumped back, my foot sliding on spilled packing peanuts. The edge clipped my ankle hard enough to steal my breath. "Power!" Someone yelled. I hit the floor, hands braced, heat shooting up my leg. The supervisor hovered, clipboard tucked close. "You can stand. Right. We'll log this as after shift." A voice cut in. "No." Tyler stepped forward, already dropping to one knee. He pulled off his belt and wrapped it tight above my ankle. Hands steady. "She's not moving," he said. And this happened on the clock. The supervisor's face tightened. "You don't get to decide that." Tyler looked up. I'm a witness. The emergency room blurred together white walls, clipped instructions, a boot strapped on too tight. Fracture, the doctor said. You'll need rest. Rest didn't pay rent. 2 days later, the warehouse called. Policy, the supervisor said flatly. After an injury, we can't keep you. The diner cut my hours the same week. Slow season, they said. Tyler showed up that night with takeout and his laptop. I'll bring notes, he said. You don't fall behind. I tried to protest. He stayed anyway. The financial aid office offered a loan, interest attached. I declined. Elaine wired money the next morning, just enough to cover groceries and the bus. No message. She never needed one. Later that night, Tyler spread shipment logs across the table. Hospitals don't actually run out of supplies, he said. They lose track of them. I stared at the numbers, the gaps lining up too clean to ignore. I propped my boot on a chair and opened my laptop. Show me everything, I said. The screen filled. The pain faded into background noise. For the first time in weeks, the work made sense. We started in the engineering building after hours because nobody cared if the lights stayed on late. The janitor nodded at us like we were part of the furniture. Tyler brought coffee that tasted burnt. This is temporary, he said, setting the cups down. Everything is temporary. Min showed up a week later, quiet, backpack heavy. Tyler waved him over. This is Hannah. She's the one who keeps finding the gaps. Min glanced at my screen. You're mapping shipment delays by facility and cross-checking against reorder timing, I added. The losses aren't random. He pulled up a chair. You're right, they're procedural. That was how it started. No speeches, just screens filling up. We registered the company in a small office with peeling paint and a printer that jammed every third page. Bio Predict A. I sounded bigger than we were. We liked that. Our first pilot was with a regional hospital network. The call dropped twice before the director came back on. If this flags a shortage that isn't real, she warned, we shut it down. Tyler leaned forward. That's fair. The system flagged a delay in surgical gloves 2 days later. The hospital rerouted inventory in time. No shortage, no headlines. Just a quiet email. Run it again. We ran it again. Then again. Months blurred into years. Compliance reviews. Security audits. Paperwork that asked the same questions in different fonts. Min handled the models. Tyler wrangled operations. I lived between code and meetings, translating one into the other. We failed a demo when a dashboard froze mid-presentation. Tyler took the blame without looking at me. Another hospital pulled out after legal review. I stared at the email until the words went flat. Elaine called that night. You sound tired. I am. Good, she said. That means you're doing something hard. By year 8, the numbers held, the contracts stacked. A larger company reached out with careful language. We're interested in acquisition, their vice president said. Structured over time. The term sheet came thick. Earn-out clauses, retention periods, equity protections. I read it twice before signing anything. Tyler watched my face. You good? Not excited. I said, just clear. The wire hit weeks later. Enough to breathe. Enough to choose. We moved offices, new chairs, whiteboards without cracks. Min taped a photo of the first cluttered desk to the wall. Don't forget, he said. I just didn't announce it. On my phone. Missed calls from home piled up and stopped. The work kept coming. The system held. One night, after everyone left, I shut down my laptop and sat there a moment longer than usual. The building was quiet. The lights stayed on. Carol called first, not yelling. Almost warm. Hannah, she said, like we were picking up a conversation from years ago. I heard you landed. I did. I'm glad, she replied quickly. It means a lot that you came. I took the rental car off the highway toward St. Joseph, the dashboard clock glowing too bright in the dark. You said it was important. It is. Family stuff. A pause. Practiced. Brad's hit a rough patch. But we'll talk when you're here. The backyard looked familiar by daylight. New string lights, a bigger cake, same folding chairs. Carol met me at the gate, arms open. "There you are," she said, pulling me in before I could step back. "You look good. Strong." Brad hovered nearby, avoiding my eyes. Richard stood a few steps behind them, hands folded, waiting for instructions. Carol kept a hand on my arm as we walked. "I know I wasn't always easy," she said softly. "I pushed you because I saw potential. Look how that turned out." I didn't answer. She lowered her voice. "Mothers don't get credit for the hard parts." Later, inside the house, she closed the door to the den. "No guests, no smiles. We need help," she said, finally dropping the tone. "Between the tax issue and the attorney, it's about $460,000. Brad shifted in his chair. "It's temporary." I nodded once. "Okay, let's talk through it." Carol blinked. "What do you mean?" "Sell the truck," I said. "The boat. Cut expenses. I'll help once there's movement." Brad stiffened. "That's my stuff." Carol's face changed. "You have the money. I have boundaries." She laughed, sharp and short. "So this is how you repay us." "I'm not refusing," I said. "I'm asking for responsibility." Her voice rose. "After everything I did for you." Richard opened his mouth, then stopped. Carol stepped closer. "You always thought you were better than us?" "That's not true." She shook her head, eyes bright with anger now. "I wish I didn't have to see you every day." The room went still. There it was. Not strategy, not manipulation, just rage at losing control. I picked up my bag. "You don't." Brad stood up. "Wait," I set my keys on the table. The rental car fob clicked once. "I'll email you the name of a good lawyer," I said. That's all. Carol stared like she hadn't expected the ending. I walked out without rushing, drove back toward the airport, returned the car, boarded the red-eye back to Charlotte by the time the plane lifted. My phone was quiet. So was I. I didn't go home after that. I drove until the road stopped asking questions and then turned back toward the place that felt quiet on purpose. The house by the lake was dark when I arrived. I left the lights off and stood in the kitchen, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the soft click of the thermostat. Ordinary sounds. Mine. The table sat in the middle of the room, long and solid, the kind you don't have to explain. I ran my hand along the edge, felt the small nick near one corner where Tyler dropped a toolbox months ago. My phone buzzed once, a missed call, then another. I set it face down and made coffee. Elaine came by the next morning with pastries and a bag of oranges. She didn't ask what happened. She never did. "You eat," she said, setting things down, "then you rest." Later. Tyler texted a photo from the office. Min had taped a new note to the wall. Pilot approved. That night, a few people came over. No speeches, no toasts, just plates passing, chairs scraping, quiet laughter that didn't feel like a performance. Someone asked if the chair at the end was taken. I shook my head. Sit. When the house emptied again, I stayed at the table longer than I needed to. No one calling my name from another room. No list to manage. No role waiting. I thought about the girl I was under the stairs, unplugging and plugging things back in, learning how to keep going without permission. I thought about how far she traveled without anyone noticing. Hannah Mercer doesn't carry that sentence anymore. It doesn't follow me into rooms. It doesn't sit at my table. I rinsed my mug and left it upside down to dry. Tomorrow would be work, meetings, small decisions, all manageable. If you're still here, stay a while. Stories like this don't end with noise. They end with space. Revenge pulse.